Hey, everybody, welcome back to the SCB Steelers Inside Blitz, presented by Deck Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. I am SteelDad, the host of the SCB Steelers podcast, which, of course, will be coming up on Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern on our YouTube channel. Obviously, it's been a crazy 24 hours for Steeler Nation. I'm not going to get too much into the game. The loss to Houston, just simply because there is so much more to unpack. Uh, since roughly 2 o'clock today, when Mike Tomlin announced his resignation, the fact that he's going to step away as head coach of the Steelers after 19 years, we'll obviously dive into this tremendously on Thursday night. And as you can imagine, the guys are ramping up and ready to go. But I'll be real honest with you, too. We talked about doing a show tonight, and we kind of decided at the last minute that with Art Rooney II deciding that he's going to speak tomorrow, Wednesday, that we would hold off and go Thursday. And real honestly, too, the other part of it is emotionally we're kind of drained a little bit. It's just it's been such a weird 24 hours, and it's I have to give credit to Ellie, who's a long time SCB contributor and everything, and she's been on the podcast many times. She made a comment a little while ago that it's almost like you're a child of a Steelers divorce in some ways, and I think she's right. If you're a child of divorce, you probably definitely get that. Just the point being is that whether you love Mike Tomlin, hate Mike Tomlin, it doesn't matter. He was the head football coach of your favorite team, and he was the most visible guy. He was the quotable guy. You loved him at times, you hated him at times, and just like your family members, right? So I thought that was a great point, and it really is where things are today in this respect. And what I would also say too is that as far as the game goes, I don't know that anybody was really overly surprised. 7-6 in the second half. It felt more like, I don't know, 17-6. Houston was moving the ball, but CJ Stroud did his best, absolute best, to keep us in that game with 3 turnovers. Because our offense was unable to do anything. And let's credit the Houston defense, because they're really, really good. They're fast. They're aggressive at all 3 levels. And perhaps most importantly, they're excellent tacklers. They knew the Steelers relied heavily on dump-offs, relied very heavily on yards after catch, and they completely eliminated that yesterday. I thought Arthur Smith got away from the run at times, perhaps too much. There was one in the first half when we got down. I want to say we were right around the red zone and had run the ball fairly well, and then all of a sudden we went 3 straight passes, and that was it. Kicked the field goal. But that was just indicative of things. And when you can't take advantage of turnovers, especially in the postseason, you're going to be snake bit by that. There's not much you can do about 2 defensive scores. That's not really on the defense. I thought our defense was admirable at times, keeping us in the game, just simply because of the fact they got those turnovers. But truth of the matter is they were being gutted by the run. Especially between the tackles, almost between the guards, to be real honest. We could not stop it. I don't really know that we did everything we could to stop it, but we couldn't. Even TJ Watt struggled on the edge. He got beat to the outside 2 or 3 different times. It was not a good day for a lot of guys, to say the least. But once the 2 defensive scores happened, it was done. We were not going to score on that defense. And then by that point, our defense was so gassed that the final touchdown was it was a moot point. I think we there's a numbness that comes with a season ending, and there's a different numbness when you know that your team needs to move on from its head coach. And so last night at midnight, all of us were kind of left to wonder and thought, well, at the very least, we got to have a change of defensive coordinator, maybe offensive coordinator. Will Aaron Rodgers be back? And those were all the things that we were talking about. Those are all the things that we were thinking about. And by this afternoon, that game now feels as far away as the Civil War when you consider what transpired with Mike Tomlin. And so let me just transition to that for a minute. Understand a couple of things. There's a contingent of Steeler Nation that Mike Tomlin is the only person they know as the head football coach of their team. There are groups of people who love Mike from day one and love him still, and there are groups that didn't like the hire and still don't like the hire, and that's life. You're going to get that in anything, any field, any walk of life, so to speak. I think from talking to a few people, I think the aspect of him being a leader, being a role model for a lot of young men was important, very, very important, in fact. And we often, we take for granted the significance that some people have in other people's lives and everything else. But at the end of the day, this is a business, and the business of the National Football League is making money, number one. Okay, let's be very honest. But number two, it's winning. And when you go to the postseason, as often as he did, and come away with nothing the last 7 times. And in fact, last night was arguably more competitive for a good part of the game than most of his recent playoff failures. I just believe change was necessary from the aspect of both for Mike and for this franchise. There had to be change. Nothing was happening. There was nothing going on that was suggesting that, well, we're going to get better. Well, we're on the right path or any of that. It was Groundhog Day. It was literally Bill Murray and Groundhog Day. Every year was feeling the same. I wrote about this at the very beginning of the season at SteelCityBlitz.com, and it continued. And so therefore, I am not surprised by this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm surprised in the sense of how quickly it went down. Okay. Did I think it was possible he could walk away? Yes, that's always a possibility. The fact that he did it about 12 hours after the game last night was what was very surprising to me. And it also suggests, and just talking to a few of the people that I know closer to the situation, there were inklings that this was much more possible than it had ever been, but they still didn't really feel like it was going to happen. And maybe it's just the realism of it that actually has happened. But at the end of the day, which I think I've used that particular phrase now twice. Jeez, I got to get some new material. I think what it boiled down to is Tomlin apparently told Josina Anderson, ESPN, that he didn't feel appreciated and stuff. I'll be honest, that's bullshit. That's just bullshit. You're the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. You might not be liked by some of the fan base. You might not be, worshipped by some of the fan base, man. But you're the head coach of one of the great franchises in American professional sports. You are absolutely appreciated. Maybe that was meant to be a different way. I don't know. But look, when you are, achieving this non-losing seasons mark, you better have something to go with it because the regular season doesn't mean anything to us. Okay, we're not the type of fan base that's like, oh, hey, man, I'm so glad we finished 10-7 this year. I'm so glad we got into the playoffs this year. That's not what we are. I mean, for God's sakes, how many communities tell their schools to go on a late start so kids can stay up and watch the game? This is a religion in Pittsburgh. This is a religion for Steeler Nation. And I just, I don't know. I'm just very troubled sometimes at the idea that just having winning seasons or non-losing seasons is what we strive for. It's not. It is not. For 40 years, this team didn't win doodly squat. And you could say, well, maybe that, I don't know. No. This team won 4 Super Bowls over 6 years and completely changed the direction and the paradigm of this franchise. And it's something they've stuck with ever since. They are an incredibly patient franchise. And as we've seen by 3 head coaches since 69. So again, I think Mike was definitely having conversations over the course of this year. And that's when things went as poorly as they did last night. I think he looked at having to battle again next year with another ugly quarterback situation. It just wasn't appealing to him. And I get it. I totally get it. Now, as far as, who do you bring in? Let's remember a couple of things. Both Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin were defensive guys who had never been head coaches, who had been largely, position guys or eventually coordinators and then made their way to becoming head football coach of the Steelers. I would be very surprised. I keep hearing things about Freeman from Notre Dame. I don't see it. He has no NFL head coaching, no NFL coaching experience. I don't think it's going to be him. And apparently he's made some comments, or somebody put out a post that he's staying at Notre Dame. He should stay at Notre Dame. He's a good football coach. He's a good guy. But that's a ship I don't want to board. Brian Flores, I think, is an obvious choice simply because he was very impressive in the year that he was here as a defensive assistant. We know what he can do defensively. We know what his background is, having been successful with the Patriots as a player. So I think you start there, but there's a lot of coordinators too. And look, do you look at a guy like Chris Shula, who fits that mold a little bit, younger, he's in his 30s, he's a defensive coordinator, been a defensive assistant. Do you look at some of these other guys that are of the defensive nature? I do not see it being anybody. I think Robert Saleh would be an excellent defensive coordinator candidate. I don't know that I want him as my head football coach. And the only saving grace to that is that he had to deal with the New York Jets front office and ownership. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he could turn into a great head coach given the situation. But whoever comes in is going to have work to do. We've got to find a quarterback. We've got to get more depth along the defensive line. We need safety help. We need 1 or 2 spots along that offensive line to be solidified. So there's obviously receiver. There's a lot to take on, and I don't think this will be done overnight. I think the Steelers will do their due diligence. They'll put together their list, which I'm sure they have. Every team has a list. You always do. It doesn't matter if you got a young coach, old coach, doesn't matter. There's a list. But to close things out, and we'll fill you in much more with all the guys' opinions and everything coming up on Thursday night at 10. But I think for both Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers, this was the right move. It's still setting in a little bit, but I still feel that it's the absolute best thing for everybody involved. Um, and it's time for something new. After 7 straight playoff losses, the patience had worn thin, even for the Roonies and even for the Steelers. Things had worn thin, and this is the best thing. So I'll end it right there. This is one of my longer short form podcasts, but we'll talk much more about candidates, all that stuff coming up on the show Thursday night, 10 p.m. right over on our YouTube channel. And until then, love all of you. Thanks so much for supporting us at SteelCityBlitz.com. Thanks to Deck Roofing, of course, Frank Walker Law for the studio, and of course, our great friends at Variety Sports Network for giving us this platform as well. So we'll hopefully see you guys in the chat and on the tube coming up on Thursday night. And hey, go Steelers. We've had some drinks.